What if the story of Peter Pan was never meant to celebrate eternal youth, but to warn us about it? Since childhood, we've been taught to envy the boy who never grows up, a life without responsibilities, endless adventures, infinite freedom. It sounds like a dream, but what if that dream hides a quiet tragedy? Look closely at the world around you. How many people postpone their dreams because they're waiting for the perfect moment? How many avoid commitment, fearing it will steal their freedom? How many keep every door open, only to discover they've never truly walked through any of them? Perhaps growing older isn't what we fear. Perhaps we fear becoming someone we can no longer imagine. Carl Jung believed that the deepest stories endure because they mirror the hidden movements of the human soul. Marie-Louise von Franz took this idea even further, revealing that Peter Pan embodies one of the most powerful archetypes in psychology, the eternal child, the part of us that longs for endless possibility but trembles before responsibility. What if Neverland isn't a magical island at all? What if it's a place inside the mind, where life never truly begins? There is a quiet belief that many of us carry, without ever questioning it. It whispers that growing up means losing something essential, that adulthood slowly erases wonder, that responsibility suffocates creativity, that commitment steals freedom, and if we aren't careful, life becomes nothing more than a series of obligations that bury the person we once were. It is a comforting story. It is also one of the most dangerous lies we can believe, because the fear of growing up rarely announces itself as fear. Instead, it disguises itself as the pursuit of freedom. We tell ourselves we'll settle down later. We'll commit when the timing feels right. We'll finish the project when inspiration returns. We'll choose a direction once we're absolutely certain it's the perfect one. Days become months. Months become years. Without realizing it, we begin living in a world where every possibility remains open, but nothing is ever fully lived. Modern culture often celebrates this way of life. We admire endless reinvention. We praise people who refuse to be tied down. We chase experiences, collect options, and leave escape routes open, believing that keeping every door unlocked is the same as being free. But is it? Or is freedom without commitment simply another form of captivity? This question reaches far beyond careers or relationships. It touches the very structure of the human soul. Every meaningful life is shaped by choices, and every genuine choice requires giving up countless alternatives. To become one person, we must let go of the fantasy of becoming everyone. That is precisely where so many people struggle. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack dreams, but because choosing one path feels like losing all the others. This hidden conflict explains why so many brilliant ideas remain unfinished, why promising relationships never deepen, and why countless lives become collections of beautiful beginnings without enduring endings. Long before psychologists gave this struggle a name, storytellers had already captured it in symbolic form. Among all those stories, none is more revealing than Peter Pan. For generations, he has been celebrated as the boy who refused to grow up, a symbol of innocence, adventure, and limitless imagination. Yet beneath the magic lies a question few people ever ask. What if Peter's greatest gift was also his greatest prison? To answer that, we must leave behind the version of Peter Pan we thought we knew, and step into a place where fairy tales reveal not how we should escape reality, but why we spend so much of our lives trying to escape ourselves. And that journey begins in a place called Neverland. When we hear the name Neverland, we imagine a place beyond ordinary life, an island where children never age, adventures never end, and every day promises another escape from the rules of the adult world. It feels like paradise, but symbols rarely mean what they appear to mean. Carl Jung observed that the landscapes found in myths and fairy tales often represent inner territories rather than physical places. They are maps of the psyche, revealing psychological conditions that exist within every human being. Seen through this lens, Neverland is no longer a distant island. It becomes a state of consciousness. It is the place inside us where everything remains possible because nothing has to become real. Think about the dreams you've postponed, the conversations you've delayed, the creative projects waiting for the right time, the life you imagine living someday once circumstances are perfect. Neverland is built from those tomorrows. At first, this psychological space feels comforting. There are no irreversible decisions there, no painful failures, no disappointing compromises. Every version of your future still exists, untouched by reality. As long as nothing is chosen, nothing can truly be lost. But something else cannot be gained either, because potential, no matter how beautiful, is not the same as life. This is one of the deepest paradoxes hidden within Peter Pan's story. Neverland offers endless freedom, yet nothing truly changes. Friendships remain suspended. Battles repeat themselves. Adventures begin again and again, but no one is transformed by them. Time seems absent, and with it disappears the possibility of genuine growth. The island is alive with movement, but empty of development. How different is that from the lives many people lead today? We constantly move from one ambition to another, from one relationship to the next, from one version of ourselves to another, believing that movement alone means progress. Yet activity is not the same as transformation. We can remain endlessly busy while avoiding the one decision that would fundamentally change who we are. This is why Peter can fly. Flight is one of the story's most beautiful symbols, but psychologically it carries a hidden tension. Flying frees him from gravity, the force that pulls everything toward the earth. Symbolically, gravity represents reality itself, limits, responsibility, permanence, and the weight of consequences. Peter escapes all of it with effortless ease. For a moment, that feels exhilarating. But a life without gravity is also a life without roots. Without roots, nothing grows. And if Neverland represents the seductive comfort of endless possibility, then the next question becomes unavoidable. What kind of person chooses to live there forever? If Neverland is a psychological landscape, then Peter Pan is more than its adventurous hero. He is the living image of a pattern that exists within every human being, a pattern that Carl Jung's school of psychology came to recognize as the eternal child, or Puer Aeternus. This archetype is often misunderstood. When people hear the phrase eternal child, they imagine someone immature, irresponsible, or unwilling to grow up. But the symbol reaches far deeper than behavior. Archetypes are not personalities. They are forces that shape the way we experience life. The eternal child carries extraordinary gifts. It is the source of imagination before the world teaches us to doubt. It inspires curiosity, creativity, hope, spontaneity, and the ability to see possibilities where others see only limitations. Every great artist, inventor, explorer, and visionary has been touched by this energy. Without the eternal child, humanity would stop dreaming. The problem begins only when this archetype refuses to evolve. Marie-Louise von Franz devoted an entire book to understanding this psychological pattern because she observed how often it appeared in modern life. Again and again, she encountered individuals filled with remarkable intelligence, talent, and sensitivity, yet unable to build a life that reflected those gifts. They were always preparing, always imagining, always searching for the perfect opportunity, but rarely committing themselves to one path. It wasn't because they lacked ambition. It was because every commitment felt like a death. To choose one career meant abandoning countless others. To devote themselves to one relationship meant letting go of every imagined possibility. To accept one identity meant saying goodbye to all the people they might have become. For the eternal child, possibility feels safer than reality. Reality has limits. Reality demands sacrifice. Reality asks us to become someone instead of endlessly imagining everyone we could be. This is why Peter never truly changes. He fights pirates. He rescues friends. He flies across the skies. Yet each adventure ends exactly where it began. Nothing transforms him because transformation requires accepting time, loss, and responsibility, the very experiences he spends his life avoiding. The tragedy is not that Peter refuses to grow older. The tragedy is that he never discovers who he might have become. Perhaps this is why his story still resonates so deeply today. In a culture overflowing with choices, endless distractions, and constant reinvention, many people find themselves trapped in the same invisible cycle, rich in potential, yet poor in fulfillment. And this raises a question that changes everything. If the eternal child is not the true enemy, then who or what is Peter Pan really running from? Every memorable story has a villain, someone to fear, someone to defeat, someone who stands in the hero's way. For generations, Captain Hook has played that role. He is portrayed as cruel, obsessive, and consumed by his desire to destroy Peter Pan. From a child's perspective, the conflict seems obvious. Peter represents youth and freedom. Hook represents adulthood and authority. One appears full of life, the other seems trapped by bitterness. But symbols rarely stop at first impressions. The more closely we examine their relationship, the more a surprising question begins to emerge. What if Captain Hook is not the true enemy? In Jungian psychology, the figures we fear most in myths often represent realities that the ego refuses to face. They appear threatening not because they are evil, but because they demand a transformation we are not ready to accept. Seen this way, Hook becomes something far greater than a pirate. He becomes the embodiment of time. Notice what defines him. He is disciplined where Peter is impulsive. He follows structure where Peter seeks spontaneity. He understands consequence where Peter lives only for the present moment. Most importantly, Hook is painfully aware that time cannot be stopped. This symbolism becomes unmistakable through the crocodile. The creature is unlike any other danger in Neverland. It does not chase treasure. It does not seek revenge. It moves with calm certainty, accompanied by the relentless ticking of the clock it swallowed. Tick, tick, tick. Every sound announces the same truth. Time is coming. No matter how fast we run, no matter how high we fly, no matter how long we remain in Neverland, the ticking follows us all. Perhaps this is why Peter never truly defeats either Hook or the crocodile. They are not enemies that can be conquered. They are realities that must be acknowledged. The passing of time, the certainty of change, and the awareness of mortality are not flaws in human existence. They are the very conditions that give life its urgency and meaning. Marie-Louise von Franz observed that the eternal child often lives as though there will always be another opportunity, another beginning, another tomorrow. This illusion makes commitment feel unnecessary because the future seems endless. But when time is denied, life loses its direction. Every postponed decision quietly becomes another piece of a future that never arrives. The irony is profound. Peter spends his life fighting the very force that could have helped him become whole. Captain Hook does not merely represent everything Peter hates. He represents everything Peter needs to confront. Because maturity begins the moment we stop seeing time as our enemy and recognize it as the silent companion that reminds us our lives are finite and therefore precious. And if Peter cannot take that final step, another character quietly does. While he remains forever in Neverland, Wendy chooses a different path, one that reveals what real courage truly looks like. In many retellings of Peter Pan, Wendy is remembered as the sensible one, the girl who leaves the adventure behind, returns home, and grows up. Compared to Peter's endless flights and fearless battles, her decision can seem ordinary, even disappointing. But psychologically, Wendy performs the bravest act in the entire story. She chooses reality. Not because reality is easier, because it is harder. It is tempting to believe that courage belongs only to those who chase the unknown, fight monsters, or refuse to follow the rules. Yet there is another kind of courage that rarely receives applause. It is the courage to remain, to build, to care for something long enough that it changes you. That is the courage Wendy embodies. She experiences the wonder of Neverland. She sees its beauty, its freedom, and its endless adventures. Unlike Peter, she does not reject its magic. She simply realizes that a life made only of extraordinary moments can never become a meaningful one. Magic without continuity eventually becomes repetition. Freedom without direction becomes drifting. Adventure without transformation becomes escape. This is the psychological turning point that separates Wendy from Peter. Both encounter the same symbolic world. Only one understands that it cannot become a permanent home. From a Jungian perspective, Wendy represents the beginning of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming the person we are capable of being. Individuation does not ask us to abandon imagination or silence the child within us. It asks something far more difficult. It asks us to carry that child into reality, to protect wonder while accepting limits, to keep dreaming while learning to work, to remain open to mystery while honoring commitment. This balance is what the eternal child struggles to achieve. The Puer Aeternus believes that choosing one life means betraying every other possibility. Wendy discovers the opposite. She understands that only through choosing can possibility become destiny. A dream that is never lived remains only an image. A dream accepted with responsibility becomes a life. This is why returning home is not a defeat. It is an initiation. The home Wendy returns to is no longer just a physical place. Symbolically, it represents psychological grounding, the willingness to belong to time, to relationships, to responsibility, and to the unfinished work of becoming fully human. Peter mistakes permanence for imprisonment. Wendy discovers that genuine freedom does not disappear when we make commitments. It deepens. Because the most meaningful experiences in life are not the ones we endlessly imagine, but the ones we patiently build. And perhaps that is the greatest secret hidden inside this story. Growing up was never the end of the adventure. It was always the beginning of the real one. Perhaps the greatest misunderstanding about growing up is the belief that adulthood demands the sacrifice of the child we once were. Many people spend years resisting responsibility because they fear it will extinguish their curiosity. They avoid commitment because they believe it will imprison their freedom. They postpone important decisions because they cannot bear the thought of closing doors forever. Yet the real tragedy is not that responsibility destroys imagination. It is that avoiding responsibility slowly destroys the possibility of giving imagination a place in the world. Throughout Peter Pan, we are tempted to believe that remaining young is the highest form of freedom. But by the end of our journey, another truth begins to emerge. Peter preserves his childhood perfectly, but at an extraordinary cost. He never discovers the quiet satisfaction of building something that outlasts a single adventure. He never experiences the depth of love that grows through shared years. He never learns that meaning is rarely found in endless beginnings, but in the courage to continue when the excitement fades. His greatest victory becomes his greatest loss. He escapes time, but he also escapes transformation. Carl Jung believed that the goal of psychological development was not perfection, but individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole. Wholeness is never achieved by rejecting one part of ourselves in favor of another. It emerges when opposing forces learn to coexist. The child and the adult, freedom and responsibility, imagination and discipline, possibility and commitment. Marie-Louise von Franz reminded us that the eternal child does not need to disappear. It needs a relationship with reality. Only then can its gifts truly flourish. Creativity becomes creation. Vision becomes vocation. Dreams become a life that can be lived instead of merely imagined. Perhaps this is why so many fairy tales end not with endless adventure, but with a return home, the founding of a kingdom, or the beginning of a new chapter. These endings are not celebrations of conformity. They symbolize the moment when the soul accepts the responsibility of shaping its own destiny. And maybe that is the secret Peter Pan leaves for those willing to look beyond the surface of the story. Neverland is not simply a place we visit in childhood. It is a temptation we carry throughout our lives. Each of us must eventually decide whether to remain surrounded by beautiful possibilities or to risk bringing one of them into reality. Growing up, then, is not the end of wonder. It is the moment wonder becomes creation. The child within you does not ask to be protected from life. It asks to grow with you. Because the imagination that once taught you to dream was never meant to remain in Neverland. It was always meant to help you build a world worthy of those dreams. Every generation inherits stories that seem to belong to children. Yet the greatest fairy tales survive because they were never only about children. They were always about the human soul. Peter Pan has endured for more than a century, not because he can fly, but because every one of us recognizes something of ourselves in him. The longing to remain untouched by time, the hope that one more tomorrow will always be waiting, the quiet belief that if we keep every possibility alive, we will never have to face the pain of choosing. But life asks something different of us. It asks us to discover that every meaningful choice closes one door so another can finally be walked through. That responsibility is not the enemy of freedom, but the path that gives freedom direction. And that imagination reaches its highest expression, not when it escapes reality, but when it transforms it. Perhaps the greatest lesson hidden within Peter Pan is this: the child inside you was never asking to stay young forever. It was asking not to be forgotten. You honor that child not by refusing to grow, but by carrying its curiosity into your work, its wonder into your relationships, its courage into your decisions, and its dreams into the life you are willing to build. Because in the end, the opposite of Neverland is not adulthood. It is wholeness. And maybe the day we finally stop running from time is the day we discover that growing up was never about leaving magic behind. It was about becoming someone capable of creating it. If this story changed the way you see Peter Pan, or perhaps the way you see yourself, share your thoughts in the comments. Which symbol spoke to you the most? Neverland, Captain Hook, Wendy, or the eternal child? If you enjoy exploring the hidden psychological wisdom within fairy tales, myths, and the works of Carl Jung and Marie-Louise von Franz, subscribe to Unconscious Wisdom and join us on the next journey into the symbolic world of the human soul. Until next time, remember, the stories that endure are often the ones that have been quietly telling our own story all along.